Hi, and welcome to AI in C#, where we look today at Azure AI Foundry Agents, which was released in Build 2025. But unfortunately, during Build, Microsoft more or less only showed how to use it using Python, not C#. And the few C# sessions they had actually just skipped a lot of the basic stuff. So I'm going to go through everything from zero to getting started. Disclaimer, very hot bits, lots of things that are not too polished yet, but here we go. If we go to ai.azure.com, which you might know from Azure OpenAI, you will see that there is a new thing called AI Foundry instead of just Azure OpenAI as type. So the old systems look like this, with the model calculator, chat, the assistant, and so on. And you might think this is where you need to go, but actually it's a new kind of portal. It looks more or less the same, but you can see it's called agent instead of assistant, and it has various small changes. If you need to make one of these, you are prompted if you want to make an Azure AI Foundry resource or an AI Hub resource, which is the old one, and Azure OpenAI was actually a third one that was made via the normal Azure portal. But this is the new one. You can make it quite easily, just putting the various things for resource groups and names and so on. But because it takes a little while, I will skip this step and just go to the one I have made, which is empty. And if we go into agents, which is the one thing we're talking about today, we will see that when we run the first time, it will ask that we need to deploy a model just like we did in Azure OpenAI in order to make the agent. And I will just take GPT-4o here with my default things. So nothing major there. And what we're going to end up is with an agent that makes out of the box, which is the agent that we're going to talk to, and some threads, which for some reason can't be deleted. This is a bug, it seems. But this is the new thread that is made. The old ones was from me trying this previously. The agent itself here, so threads is every single conversation. If you know OpenAI, each of your conversations over here equals one thread. So if we look here, we have the agents. We can give it a name. Unfortunately, we can't change this ugly ID. They are auto-generated, but we can call it my first agent. We have the deployments, and we have the instructions, the develop message, system message, whatever we call it. And we can just write, you are a cool agent, AI agent. Then you can give it a description, doesn't affect anything, just for this portal. And then there's knowledge, which we'll go into a bit later. We can set the temperature and the top P, like normal stuff. There's no save button, so you need to go out of the fields for it to save. Threads, we're gonna do via code, so we're not gonna go in that. But we are trying to go to the playground here and talk to the agent. Let's just say hello and see if it answers back correctly. No, there's something about the first time you have it that it can't answer suddenly. Seen that a few times before. Let's see. Nope. Failed to resolve my model. Don't really matter. We will hopefully get it working using the code, which is the most important thing. But the reason I went here is that Microsoft have made this sample code thing where you can get it in Python, C#, and JavaScript. And we want, of course, C#, and we see some code here. And this code absolutely don't work. Absolutely. It won't compile, and they forget to tell you what NuGet packages this is about. And for example, this thing doesn't exist. So this code is out of date. So let's go and see my versions of the code. Let's quickly see if we can get the agent to react so we are sure that it actually works correct. Not here. Let's see if we can encode. So I have taken the code more or less the same as they had in the sample and modified it a bit so it works. First up, we need a NuGet package, and that is this one, Azure AI Agents Persistence. You can also see it in the normal here. And this is the package we need to do, and you can see a lot of transistor package. But this is the one, you can see it's in beta, so you need to have it as pre-release. And what we need to do is we need to take our agent. We saw the agent had a ID. And we need to put that into code. And we also need the endpoint. So we have that. And then I put up the message that we're going to say. We're just going to say hello world here in the beginning. Then they said you needed to make an endpoint with your URL. That's not correct. And you needed to make an AI project client, which is not correct. You need to make a persistent agent client instead. This one exists, but you can't turn this one into a persistent agent client because this extension method doesn't exist. Or it could be in some kind of NuGet package that I don't know, but again, they are not telling what's going on. But in any case, we can make a persistent agent client, and we can't use API keys and stuff. As far as I can see, there is one, but I can't get it to authenticate using it. But you can use the default Azure credentials. So I'm using the Azure CLI credentials. We're not going to go into how credential goes to Visual Studio and the CLI and so on. But this is normal, like any other thing that you connect to in Azure. And then you get a client which have all kinds of things like administration, where we can go in and create agent, update agents, and so on. But we're just going to get our existing agent. You could get multiple agents, you can create new, and so on. And then we're going to create a new thread. In their example, they show with the thread they give. So you can also get a specific thread. But for me, it's easier to just set and get a new thread every single time here. But they will add up as we go along. Then we will see some code which is frankly ugly. So luckily we have semantic kernel and 1-bit. But we're going to make a message of type user, nothing special there. And we have the thread that it's going into. And then they are going to start a run and wait 500 milliseconds until the run is ended. This is ugly, but yeah, it works. When it's completed, if it's not completed, it will fall, but else it will go in and get the messages of the thread and loop through the messages, which often don't come in order. That's the reason why they have the list order here. And then for each message, there can be content items. I've only seen one so far for each message, but apparently there can be more. And then you get data back, like the text that it writes back, and in this case, the files it writes back. Because what you can do up in the portal is that you can add various tools to this. But let's first see if the agent works by running this code. So let me set a breakpoint I have already. And let's step through the code. So it's building, and we're making an agent. And when we get the agent here, it will be quite slow because it both needs to do the credential part and go up into Azure and find the agent. It will then create a new thread. So when we do that, it will mean that we ended up with one more thread here, which is this one that we just made with no messages yet. Then we're going to make the message and wait. Then we're going to get the messages out of the client and loop them through. And what we get here first is a message that says hello world. So that was our part. And what we're seeing is over here, we can see it says hello world. And then the answer back from the client, which is hello world, how can I help you today? So that works a bit obscure code, but it works. What we can do is we can go in and also use these various tools that the tools can. And the tools can actually be set via code as well. You can create the agent using code, and we can set the tools, we can set the model name, and so on. But the two very known ones are the code interpreter, which is the one I will go into. So that's just that it can run some Python and generate images and calculate and stuff. So we just need to do that. And the other one, which is very known, is the Bing search on the fly, where if you make a Bing grounded with Bing resource, you can do that. They're quite expensive. They cost like $35 per 1,000 searches, but that must be the price so far. But you can put that in, and then we have knowledge, so it can go and grab stuff live, and it can do code interpretation. So if we are gonna change this message to a slightly bigger one, so we say, hello world, what is the weather in Paris right now? Use the Bing search tool just to help it understand that it needs to do that, and generate a PNG of the weather situation. Use code interpreter for that as well. So if we run that, we now have our bigger message. We wait for our agent. We get a new thread. We get a response back. Takes a little longer this time because we ask it to do more things. Then it's done. We end up with the first message. I will just press F5 so I hit these two. So the first one was our message. The second one is the response from the from Bing search. So it went out using Bing, came back, found the weather in Paris. It seems like it took it from AccuWeather here. And now it says it's generating the PNG as well. And this sometimes fails in getting properly back, but let's see if it goes the right way this time. So yeah, it only gave it back right now in here, and then it came back with the sandbox version of this. And this is a mistake in the system, it seems, because now there's no more messages. Sometimes it is able to actually go down here and actually give us an ID of a file, and then we can get that file using another API call. But it's like 1 out of 10 it actually works, it seems. So definitely something that needs to have a bug report on. But if you just want to do normal messages, then everything works as expected. So this is raw without semantic kernel, and I hopefully should never write code like this. So I have another version here over here of the semantic kernel version. And in that, if we look into NuGet packages, we just need Azure Identity and Semantic Kernel Agents Azure AI, which is their abstraction on the persistent one. So what we can do here is sort of the same. I just need the ID and the endpoint again. So we put it in here and we take this. So let's switch to this and set a breakpoint, and I will go through it line by line. So in true semantic kernels fashion, they let something else create the other NuGet packages tool. In this case, we need the persistent agent client, but they have a wrapper around that, which is technically not needed. We just need a persistent client. But Azure AI Agent is an semantic kernel thing, while we have the persistent client. And in order to get from the client here, we need to get the client, and then we get that as what they call a definition. It's just essentially the client. So these 2 lines of code are more or less the same as the first 2 ones. But then you can new up an Azure AI client from semantic kernel using the original client, the original agent, and the client. And then we could go in and say we want a new agent thread, which we just new up. So they behind the scenes make the create thread and stuff. And then we can use what looks like the normal agents in semantic kernel, where we can just use the normal chat methods and say agent.invoke with the methods, and the only thing is we need to give the agent thread. If I do this, it will fail with a null reference exception. So if I do this, we will get a null reference exception. This is because semantic kernel can't work with the Bing part yet. So in order for this to work, I need to uncouple the Bing web search. Semantic kernel will probably at some point fix this, of course, but right now that will not work. So if you have already put that in your own system, you need to remove it. Hopefully at some point they will, of course, because it's just a tool like any other. But if I do this and run it again, we end up with a callback to the question hello or the message hello, where we just get, hi there, how can I help you today? And then we can delete the thread again. That depends if you want to keep the threads and resurface them on your GUI and so on. But for this simple demo, it's easier to get rid of the thread again by deleting it. Then we come to trying to use code tools like we saw. The basic C# NuGet package directly from AI Foundry didn't work. Again, sometimes it works. It also it doesn't work in semantic kernel, but it works it doesn't work in a different manner at least. We're gonna make it agent thread again, and then I will ask in this case generate a chart of top countries and use the code interpreter to give it back as in the PNG. And what we're going to see is that we get some odd message back once it's finished. So it actually are able to call the tool, but instead of coming back and say, hey, here is the chart, it gives back the content of the Python tool that was run. And this is definitely a mistake. On their website, they talk about being able to interact anyway, but this seems like a bug that they're taking the wrong content back or something. So again, as soon as we put in the more advanced tools, this really breaks down, but for basic stuff, we can, of course, already use it. There's a hack I found in that it actually have made the system. So I can go in and get the messages off the thread, and then I will get the last thread that had an attachment, because we can see here that this is what one of the messages back that we don't get back from semantic kernel right now. They will of course fix that, but we get back a file ID, so assistant and then some ID here. And if we use the client.files.get files, so this is again the Azure persistent client agent, we can actually get the file back. So in that regard, semantic kernel works, but it's not really the way we should do this. We should get it back from the real call. But in here, we get it, and we get the option to stream back the image that it generated. So we sort of can do it, but this is probably not something we need to do long term. And then we actually get our message that here at the top. Oh, that normally doesn't work, but again, it sends it back in this manner, which is not the right one. So as you can see, things are early, things are not fully up and running, but at least now you have an understanding that, yeah, it's fairly simple, way too complex code here, but essentially you get this client that has the administration of exactly what's going on here. And long term, of course, this is very, very cool that you can just put in tools here so you don't need to write any code yourself, being able to use the code interpreter without needing to write a single line of code, getting access to various things here. There's also things like SharePoint on the way. So on average, and having all this data up here, instead of needing to put into code, it shows really good potential, I would say. But here now it's too broken to be used. So I will follow along as things begins to work over time. In the same manner, you can put vector stores, you can get evaluations, you can hook this up to application insights and so on. So very, very cool concept. It just needs to work a bit better before we really can begin to use it. So that's everything I have. Hopefully we now understand in C# and not just Python and the high level demos. So thank you and see you in the next one.